Well, kia ora and welcome to week 3. This is all about our final reflection, and in particular for this module is around practice. So how do we apply what we've been uncovering? We've looked at the what, the so what, and the practice now brings us to the now what. Now what do I do with all this new information and this new critique of who I am and my identity and how I'm showing up in the world? And you can see that I'm outside on a cold winter's day for our mindfulness activity, and it feels really appropriate actually. Tomorrow is the shortest day of the year, and I'm sure in North America you're probably experiencing the longest day of the year. And over here in the southern hemisphere, I'm not sure if Ron's talked to you about this, but we're experiencing Matariki, which is the Māori New Year. And it is a time where we go inwards and we tell a lot of stories, and it gives us a chance to rest. And so from Aotearoa to everyone else in Aotearoa, but also across to North America, I'd like to offer you a little wee story for our mindfulness activity today, and a chance just to sit and rest and go inwards for a wee moment. So find yourself nice and comfortable. I would recommend having a straight back, so sitting up, and perhaps you want something just under your bum or your sit bones so that you're sitting up on something and your bum or your hips are a little bit higher than your knees. Sometimes that helps our alignment of our back. And we're going to start by either softening your gaze or closing your eyes. And whatever you've chosen, I'm going to invite you just to continue to relax all the muscles around your eyes. The muscles on the outside, and the muscles behind the eyes. And the eyeballs themselves, can they relax? They often do a lot of work for us during the day. Perhaps you've been looking at a screen all day, so just take a moment to thank your eyes and allow them to rest. And of course, we always like to just check in on our breath if that feels good. And our breath is really powerful because it's one of the systems in our body that is subconscious. So at times we don't think about how we breathe. And we also have the ability to be conscious about it. So unlike our heart, for example, that pumps blood, we can't control that with our conscious mind, but we can influence our breath. So it often tends to be the bridge between the subconscious and the conscious. And that's why it's a really useful tool to help us relax, to de-stress. And your breath doesn't have to be anything in particular, but just watching it going in and out. And we're going to go on a little journey today, or a little story, and in your mind's eye, I'd like you to imagine a garden. And at the moment, there's not much planted in this garden. You can just see the plot of land that's been put aside. You can see perhaps the soil that's tilled and ready to go. And you're going to walk over to your garden, and there's already been seeds planted here. And I invite you to put your hands in the soil. Just notice perhaps the temperature, or the texture of the soil on your hands, if you can imagine or sense that. And then grabbing a watering can, you can just start to water the seeds that have been planted in your own unique garden. Maybe you're barefoot. Just notice how you're experiencing this place, the environment around you. And maybe even the sun comes out and you can feel the sun on your face, and also sense how that's affecting the seeds, allowing them to germinate and start to grow. And we're gonna go on a wee time journey here, because we're gonna watch our plants, our seeds start to grow. And so just imagine or see or sense what your garden starts to look like as the rain comes, as you also tend to your garden, as the sun comes and goes in the day and the night. And watch what it blossoms and blooms into. And the plants that you're noticing will be completely unique to you. You can imagine whatever you want in your garden for right now. And because everything is a part of this system, this ecosystem of life, you'll also see some weeds that have cropped up. Perhaps some things that you don't want in your garden. And just take a few moments to experience your garden or walk around your garden or look around it for the last few moments. How are you enjoying this space? And if it feels right for you, I'd invite you to acknowledge the place and the land. Perhaps the rain and the sun, or any elements that helped your garden to grow. And the plants themselves. As you start to take a few deeper breaths, I'm going to invite you to notice how you feel in your body. And when you're ready, just fluttering or blinking your eyes open and coming back into the space, into this conversation. I hope that was interesting or enjoyable perhaps. And I'd like to use the garden as a metaphor for what we're going to be looking into this week. I wonder perhaps if you can draw any links or metaphors for yourself. I'm sure there are many, and the one that I'm going to draw on hopefully starts to link in and wrap up a lot of what we've experienced in this course. So the plot of land and the environment that you initially saw at the beginning, this is your environment that you were born into. And you notice that the seeds were already planted in your garden. And what this means in this metaphor is that you didn't have a choice about the family you were born into, the culture you were born into, the environment or the place, or any context. And as we started to continue to tend to that garden, those seeds started to grow. And in the beginning, if we relate the plants as a part of you, or you as your identity, in the beginning we don't tend to our own gardens. We don't know how to look after ourselves. As we children, that's not our responsibility. And our friends and our family and our environment, our culture, shape and inform how those seeds grow, how we're looked after. And each one of those seeds was really unique. And your garden was unique completely to you. I can guarantee no one else in that visualization had the same garden as you. And that's because your story and who you are and your identity is so unique. And very, very shaped by the people and the places of how you were raised or how you started to grow. And then you were further influenced by outside environments. And that's because as we start to grow, at some point, our family, our caregivers, hand over the tending of the garden to us. So at some point, no longer are our parents or our caregivers looking after us, but we start to look after ourselves. And we will garden and tend to those gardens in the same way, generally, as what we were taught, because we don't really know any different. And as those plants continue to grow, we may start to realize that, I'm growing corn, but actually I really want to grow something else. And this is where we start to take responsibility of tending to our own gardens and the plants that we want to unfold into. We also noticed that there were weeds in our garden. And for right now in this metaphor, we're going to look at those weeds as things that we inherited from our culture or our environment or the people around us that perhaps were not so helpful, that we don't necessarily want in our garden, but we don't have a choice because they're there. And this brings us up into what this week is all about, which is around behavior change. And what are we putting into practice? Or in other words, in this metaphor is, how are we tending our own garden? How are we looking after ourselves? And how does that influence how we look after others and look after the world around us? And as adults, we do start to have a lot more choice and a lot more say in what that looks like. But of course, recognizing that we are very much a product of how and what the environments were when we were born. How this relates into sustainability, I'll give you a few examples. So it could be that what you were how you got taught to tend your garden was around not maybe there was some racism in there. I know for me, when I was growing up, there was definitely comments towards certain cultures that I would say now were racist, but I didn't realize they were racist actually until I was an adult and started to question it. And now I've tried to take that weed out and put in a different seed, right? One that I get to tend, that I get to choose. It could be that our environment has told us, and this, I'm gonna pick on media here, that we need to buy certain things to feel good. Maybe we need to buy new clothes to make us feel good, to make us feel wanted, so that we're going to find a great partner. Maybe we need to buy the latest car so that we fit in, that we have a certain status. And these are certain stories that our environment can tell us, they're the seeds or the weeds that we can get given. And then as adults we can pause and go, hang on a second, maybe that's not what I want. Maybe the story has been around perpetual success and what success looks like. I know this has been a really interesting one for me in particular lately. And I invite you to question, like, what really does make you happy, and is it continue study and work? Is it going back to the land and working with the land and slowing down? Is it a place in the middle between the two? So we're looking at practice this week, and our practice comes from our beliefs and our values. One, that we've inherited, and two, that we start to take on as adults. And then we take action from there. So the first couple of weeks we're looking at what's in the garden, what was in the plot of land, who are we, and now we're trying to figure out what to do with that. So this week we're going to be looking at cognitive dissonance, when our minds don't match up or we have inner conflict. We're going to look at some examples of some practice that's going on in Aotearoa and Dunedin here, and then we're going to look at some values and really posing a lot of lifelong questions to you of where do you sit, what do you believe, and what is the action and the practice that you are willing to take. Thank you for joining me here, and I hope you enjoy the rest of the modules.